Have you ever felt like the weight of the world was on your shoulders? Like no matter what you did, life just kept throwing obstacle after obstacle your way? Maybe it was a global pandemic that turned your life upside down, or a toxic work environment that drained you of all motivation, or a painful breakup that left you heartbroken and doubting yourself. We've all been there. Those moments where we feel powerless, overwhelmed, and at the mercy of external forces beyond our control. The bills keep piling up, the stress keeps mounting, and the negative thoughts just seem inescapable. But what if I told you there was an ancient philosophy that could help you develop the mental toughness and inner peace to rise above it all? A tried and true framework for handling life's inevitable ups and downs with grace, resilience, and unshakable calm. That's exactly what Stoicism offers. Developed by philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Over 2,000 years ago, Stoicism provides a timeless guide for living a life of virtue, reason, and self-mastery. It's a pragmatic set of principles that have guided great leaders, artists, and thinkers throughout history in the pursuit of tranquility and fulfillment. In this video, we'll explore 11 powerful Stoic principles that, if applied diligently, can help you cultivate a mindset so strong that nothing, no person, circumstance, or event has the power to rattle you. You'll learn how to focus solely on what you can control, embrace life's inevitable challenges, and maintain an unwavering inner peace, no matter what storms may come your way. So, settle in, open your mind, and get ready to unlock the secrets of the Stoic sages. The path to unshakable strength and serenity awaits. Principle 1. The Circle of Control, Mastering What You Can Influence. Have you ever spent countless sleepless nights agonizing over things totally outside your control? Worrying about the weather for your outdoor event? Stressing over a coworker's negative attitude? Or feeling anxious about the unpredictable stock market? If so, you've fallen into one of life's most draining traps, concerning yourself with what you cannot influence. The first core principle of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control. Essentially, the Stoics taught that there are things in life that are within our control and things outside of it. The things we control are our thoughts, opinions, desires, and actions. Everything else, other people's behaviors, external events, physical possessions, exists in the realm of the uncontrollable. The key to peace of mind, according to the Stoics, is to focus our energy solely on what we can control and let go of the rest. It's futile and self-destructive to spend our limited time and willpower on things we ultimately have no influence over. As Epictetus bluntly stated, the essence of philosophy is that of the discipline of desires. Take work stress, for example. While we can't control difficult co-workers, unreasonable deadlines, or corporate policies, we can control our reactions. We can approach frustrating situations with patience, look for solutions within our control, and refuse to be thrown off balance. Likewise, in relationships, we may not be able to change how others behave, but we can change how we respond. Do we escalate conflicts by reacting emotionally, or do we maintain composure and understand the other person's perspective? By ruthlessly identifying and focusing our efforts on what we can control, we eliminate so much unnecessary anxiety. We stop agonizing over hypotheticals and concentrate our willpower on constructive action. It's an immensely liberating mindset that allows us to engage with life's challenges as a calm, non-disturbed force of reason. Principle 2. Embracing the worst-case scenario. Can you imagine getting laid off from your job and being totally at peace with it? Or your home being broken into, yet feeling a strange sense of calm rather than panic? Most of us would crumble in the face of such adverse circumstances. But there's an overlooked Stoic practice that can help us develop the resilience to remain steadfast in even the darkest moments. The ancient Stoics frequently engaged in a form of negative visualization called premeditatio malorum, which means the premeditation of potential negatives or adversity. It involved deliberately contemplating all the things that could go wrong or be taken away: our possessions, relationships, health, and more. The goal was to vividly envision these worst-case scenarios to inoculate ourselves against crippling anxiety when they actually occurred. On the surface, this practice may seem morbid or pessimistic. Why dwell on negative outcomes? The Stoics argued it was precisely this exercise that allowed them to appreciate the good things in life more fully while never being caught off guard. Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." This concept was vividly illustrated when an ancient Stoic master named Zeno lost all his possessions after being shipwrecked. To his companion's distress, Zeno simply stated, "Fortune, I have little to reproach you with, since you have not brought me any catastrophe I had not premeditated." By imagining losing it all repeatedly, Zeno became ambivalent to its loss and freed from despair. While it may never feel good to experience deprivation, hardship, or loss, negative visualization equips us to weather the storm. We no longer live in constant fear, instead responding to difficulties as temporary passages to overcome. Life becomes more vibrant as we develop gratitude for simply being alive and able to grow from our struggles. Principle 3. The power of discomfort. Imagine being stranded in the wilderness with no food or shelter. Most of us would panic, terrified at the thought of having our basic comforts and conveniences stripped away. Yet there's an incredible story of a man named Dico Nola who found himself in exactly that predicament, and not only survived but came back stronger because of it. In 1939, Noel was a platinum miner in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, when a cave-in occurred deep underground, trapping him for over 60 hours with no supplies. Awaiting rescue, he made the conscious choice to accept his uncomfortable situation rather than surrender to fear. He meditated on the present moment, focused his mind, and resolved to march towards death with courage if needed. What Noel embraced was a key Stoic principle of voluntarily undergoing training discomforts and difficulties, a practice called ascesis. The Stoics didn't just accept hardship begrudgingly, but actively pursued it through fasting, exposure to the elements, poverty simulations, and more. Their logic was that by repeatedly experiencing mild discomfort, they'd become tougher, more self-sufficient, and impervious to life's inevitable rough patches. While practicing ascesis to an extreme is unnecessary today, there's profound value in selectively seeking out discomfort as training for adversity. Taking cold showers, fasting periodically, going a weekend without digital devices. These are all forms of voluntary discomfort that build our tolerance for difficulties. We become like the boxer repeatedly entering the ring, or the firefighter running drills, strengthening our resilience through graduated challenges. The more we practice getting uncomfortable, the more we realize our mind's power over perceived discomforts. We see how adaptable and hardy we truly are. What was once unthinkable becomes accepted and even welcomed as an opportunity to flex our metaphorical resilience muscles. When genuine hardships arise, rather than catastrophizing them, we face them calmly as fortifying trials in our journey of growth. Principle 4. Mastering the present moment. Imagine you're a Roman prisoner sentenced to death, spending your final days in a dark, squalid cell awaiting execution. Most would succumb to overwhelming fear, despair, and anxiety over their impending demise. Yet the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote some of his most insightful, profound works during this very situation. His secret? A dedication to living fully in the present moment. One of the core tenets of Stoicism is the practice of mindfulness, bringing our full attention to the here and now rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. The Stoics recognized that the present moment is the only thing we truly have control over. The past is gone, unchangeable, and the future remains uncertain. When our minds linger in anxiety or regret, we relinquish command over the current situation unfolding right before us. To live mindfully, the Stoics frequently practiced views from above meditations, where they removed their typical human vantages to see life with wider perspective. From this transcendent viewpoint, our daily frustrations appeared small and our worries insignificant compared to the grand scale of the cosmos. When we zoom out to this degree, frantic thoughts about the future or rumination on the past dissolve into the realization that all we ever truly have is this present slice of eternity. By anchoring ourselves firmly in the current moment through meditative practices like mindful breathing, we eliminate the internal storms of anxiety and instead move with calm, responsive clarity. We act with intentionality rather than reaction. We appreciate each moment as the gift it is, rather than allowing our minds to wander elsewhere. From this grounded state, it's far easier to think rationally, remain even-tempered, and make wise decisions unmuddied by emotional winds. The Stoics show us that regardless of our circumstances, by mastering the present moment, we free ourselves from self-created prisons of suffering. We access an unshakable inner refuge of peace no external turmoil can disturb. Principle 5. The art of self-control. Have you ever felt like a complete slave to your impulses and desires? That pint of ice cream incessantly calling your name, hitting add to cart for things you don't need, or losing your temper in a flash over minor frustrations? We've all experienced what it's like to be at the mercy of our momentary whims, but the Stoics offer a powerful antidote for this lack of self-control that so often leads us astray. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the virtue of temperance, known as sophrosynne. It refers to the self-discipline, moderation, and rational command over our naturally indulgent desires and emotions. To the Stoics, unbridled passion, lust, and anger represented a loss of our distinctly human capacity for reason and willpower. By contrast, temperance allowed us to remain poised, clear-headed, and self-governed in even the most tempting situations. Practicing temperance doesn't mean becoming an emotionless robot or ascetic monk. It simply means hitting the pause button before acting on impulse to make intentional choices aligned with our core values. Do we indulge that sweet craving and feel blah later, or take pride in our restraint? Do we snap at our spouse for doing something mildly annoying, or breathe through the irritation and stay grounded? The more we flex our temperance muscle, the easier it becomes to remain the conscious driver of our behaviors rather than backseat passenger. Simple exercises like fasting for a period, removing digital temptations for chunks of time, or consciously sitting with urges until they pass can transform our relationship to desire. We stop leaking energy through endlessly chasing fleeting wants and instead cultivate tremendous willpower and presence. The payoff goes far beyond conquering vices like overeating or shopping sprees. By mastering our internal world first, we develop the supreme focus and discipline to actualize long-term goals in health, finances, relationships, and beyond. We become lucid captains of our destinies, steering our lives with agency rather than careening about reactively. That is true freedom. Principle 6. Turning obstacles into opportunities. What would you do if you were falsely imprisoned, exiled from your home, stripped of your wealth and status? For most of us, such an injustice would unleash rage, bitterness, and endless "why me" laments. But for the Stoic philosopher Seneca, this calamitous turn became a catalyst for his greatest personal growth and life's work. A core practice of Stoicism is the reframing of adversity not as punishments or curses, but as opportunities to develop wisdom, strength, and virtue. The Stoics understood that difficulties, setbacks, and obstacles are inevitable facts of the human experience. But rather than railing against these challenges as unfair, they embraced them as tests and teachers on their philosophical journey. In Seneca's case, after being banished to Corsica by the paranoid Emperor Claudius, he was initially devastated. Yet, in time, he reframed his exile as an unexpected gift of unstructured time to finally pursue his life's passion, the study of philosophy. Free from the distractions of wealth and public life, he produced some of his greatest teachings on accepting our lot, journaling as self-reflection, and finding freedom wherever we are. Whenever we're faced with a setback, defeat, or roadblock, we have a choice in how to process it. We can succumb to anger, blame, and victimhood, remaining powerless and stuck. Or we can pause, reflect, and ask, what is this situation requiring of me? What can I learn here? How can I grow stronger, wiser, and better because of this? By reframing obstacles as opportunities, the universe itself becomes our classroom, every adversity our new curriculum for mastering resilience. Maybe it's using a career setback as motivation to finally pursue our true calling, or emerging from a painful life crucible with deeper compassion and humility, or discovering an inner reserve of courage we never knew we had until pushed to our limits. When we walk this transformational path, we're no longer tossed about by external circumstances, but forging meaning and character from the fires themselves. Principle 7. The path to self-sufficiency. Imagine being completely at peace, even if you lost it all tomorrow, your job, possessions, status, and wealth. No anxiety, no sadness, just a deep inner sense of wholeness and contentment. This may sound like an impossible ideal, but it was the exact mindset cultivated by the ancient Stoics through the practice of self-sufficiency. To the Stoics, self-sufficiency, or autarkeia, referred to the state of being truly inwardly free and complete, not dependent on anything external for one's sense of self-worth or happiness. It meant shedding attachments to fleeting pleasures, positions, and possessions, and instead finding fulfillment in simply living with wisdom and virtue. This concept flew in the face of conventional attitudes which associated self-worth with external markers like wealth, power, and social status. The more stuff we accumulated, the more we were seen as valuable and successful human beings. The Stoics rejected this, arguing that true satisfaction can only be found by turning inward. To develop this self-sufficiency, the Stoics frequently practiced stripping life down to its essentials. They lived modestly, curbed appetites for luxury, and engaged in thought experiments like imagining losing all their belongings. This way, if fortune was ever taken from them, they'd remain equanimous rather than devastated. Their sense of identity was rooted in their cultivated character, not transient circumstances. While taking this too far could mean rejoicing at the loss of loved ones, the underlying principle is highly pragmatic. The more we divest from needing anything outside ourselves to feel content, whether it's adulation, indulgences, or even specific relationships, the more we insulate our core peace. We find sufficiency in our ability to thrive with wisdom, self-discipline, and virtue in any external conditions. True freedom, prosperity, and peace arise from needing nothing that can be taken away. When our wholeness and well-being are secured inwardly, no event or person holds power over our sense of self. We nurture the only garden that can never be uprooted, the fertile grounds of our own souls. Principle 8. Embracing life's journey. Imagine boarding a ship and getting upset at the captain for the difficulties of the voyage, the storms, the delays, the seasickness. To a rational observer, this reaction would seem absurd. You knew the journey would be filled with inevitable challenges when you stepped aboard. Yet this is precisely how many of us relate to the inherent ups and downs of life itself. One of the most powerful and counterintuitive ideas from Stoicism is the concept of amor fati, a love of one's fate or lot in life. It's the practice of wholehearted acceptance for the totality of our life's journey, including all its twists, turns, and tribulations that are ultimately beyond our control. The typical attitude is one of resistance. We rail against misfortunes, curse our luck, and wish things could just be easy and problem-free. But the Stoics argued this is completely irrational given the ubiquitous difficulties that characterize the human experience. It's akin to a plant cursing the rainstorms and cold winters rather than accepting these challenging phases are part of its natural growth cycle. By reframing our perspective on adversity, we open ourselves to something profound, the ability to not just endure life's tumults, but to embrace them as pieces of our ultimate destiny. We stop seeing roadblocks as impediments and start appreciating them as adventures constructed by the unfolding of the cosmos itself. Like a novel's protagonist, our character is forged in overcoming successive trials and setbacks on the winding journey of fate. With this understanding, we develop a sense of affirmation and even gratitude for all circumstances, not because we crave suffering, but because we accept our inability to control the unfolding tapestry of life while wholeheartedly saying yes to playing our role with nobility and courage. This is how martyrs facing death and everyday people facing mundane frustrations alike can remain unperturbed. Their very acceptance of what is becomes their source of tranquility and wisdom. Principle 9. The pursuit of wisdom. What would it take for you to achieve total enlightenment and inner peace? For many, visions of living as a reclusive monk in the Himalayas or spending decades meditating in a remote ashram come to mind. Yet one of history's most wise and rational philosophers, Seneca, managed to attain supreme tranquility and insight while living as an advisor in the chaotic, decadent court of Nero, one of ancient Rome's most infamous rulers. Seneca's secret was the Stoic pursuit of wisdom, known as Sophia. To the Stoics, wisdom represented the highest understanding of how to live a virtuous, resilient, and fulfilling life in accordance with nature and reason. It wasn't about accumulating inert knowledge, but developing profound personal insights applicable to any scenario. Wisdom was cultivated through constant self-reflection, studying the wisdom of others, and taking a philosophical view towards one's experiences. As Seneca wrote, There is nothing by which the mind is so much refined as by the frequent observance of excellent things. He kept volumes of journals pondering life's deepest questions, mentored others, and transformed even mundane moments into lessons in self-awareness. The practice of pursuing wisdom isn't about endless navel-gazing or being paralyzed by indecision. It's about striving to respond to any situation, be it a simple social interaction or civilization-threatening crisis, with supreme rationality, objectivity, and insight into one's true nature. Each life episode, properly reflected upon, serves as a teacher to shed layers of ignorance, fear, and unhelpful habits. As we integrate wisdom over time, we develop a supreme level of consciousness where our thoughts, words, and actions move with unshakable congruence. There is no longer inner conflict, but unity of mind, heart, and behavior. We flow gracefully with life's inevitable fluctuations, guided by our sublime understanding. From this wellspring of tranquility and virtue, we alchemize all experiences into soul-nurturing wisdom. Principle 10. Gaining a cosmic perspective. Have you ever had one of those moments where you look up at the vast, star-filled night sky and feel this profound sense of belonging to something larger than yourself? A fleeting realization that you are but a tiny speck in the grand cosmic drama unfolding across unimaginable scales of space and time. This ability to transcend our typical human-centric view and see things from a universal vantage point is a superpower of perspective advocated by the Stoics. The Stoics called this practice of gaining views from above, or cultivating a cosmic perspective. It involved periodically removing ourselves from our limited terrestrial frames of reference, where our daily frustrations and concerns appear so monumental, and observing the world as if from a great distance. From this transcendent outlook, our typical preoccupations shrink into relative insignificance against the vast, impersonal cycles of nature. For example, when stuck in the grips of anger or despair, the Stoics would imaginatively zoom out to view life from the cosmic vantage point. Suddenly, that moment of anguish would appear fleeting and tiny against the scale of whole civilizations rising and falling across aeons. From this highest perspective, even the gravest misfortunes became humbling reminders of our temporary roles in an incomprehensibly larger narrative. This is not to say the Stoics thought our personal joys and sorrows were meaningless, but by periodically expanding our perspective, we become emboldened to handle life's ups and downs with poise, grace, and emotional latitude. No single disappointment has the power to shatter us when we view it from the highest context. No embarrassment or loss compromises our wholeness when witnessed against the eternal cycles of the cosmos. By remaining simultaneously connected to both the human and cosmic dimensions of existence, we cultivate resilience and wisdom. Able to embrace a view from above upon life's tempests, while still remaining present with our earthly experience, allows us to flow gracefully across the endless ebb and flow of existence itself. Principle 11. Embracing our mortality. Imagine living each day with the profound awareness that it could be your last on this earth. Not in a morbid way, but with a heightened appreciation for the preciousness of life and an inspiration to use your limited days with conscious intention. This perspective of embracing our mortality is a core Stoic practice known as memento mori, a reminder of the inevitability of death. On the surface, this philosophy of consciously contemplating death may seem bleak or depressing, but to the Stoics, keeping an acute awareness of our finite human existence was a powerful antidote to the trivialities and excessive attachments that so often plague the mind. As the great thinker Michel de Montaigne wrote, "To practice death is to practice freedom. A person who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." By reflecting on the certainty of our eventual demise, the Stoics aimed to eliminate our tendencies to waste the present moment, caught in anxieties about an uncertain future that may never arrive. It's the ultimate motivation to live each day intentionally, to wake up with a sense of urgency, to engage with life's realities and focus on what truly matters most. Keeping death's perspective allows us to discard the endless concerns, grievances, and vanities that drain our vitality and attention. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." When we internalize the reality that our time is frighteningly limited, we discipline our minds to be present, prioritize our highest values, and avoid souring the fleeting days we have left with negativity and trivialities. By paradoxically embracing our mortality through memento mori, we don't become doomed nihilists. Rather, we awaken to the profound gift of life itself. We let go of the illusion of permanence and treat each rising sun as the rare miracle it truly is. In those realizations lie the keys to lives of authentic purpose, profound joy, and ultimate peace. We've explored 11 powerful principles from the timeless philosophy of Stoicism. Individually, each of these practices offers a profound avenue for strengthening our resilience, focus, and inner peace. But taken together, they represent a comprehensive framework for living a life of wisdom, tranquility, and self-mastery. The path of the Stoic is one of supreme resilience, reason, and reverence for the human experience. It's a journey of awakening to our highest potential as conscious beings capable of confronting any circumstance with courage, grace, and an undefferable freedom found only within. So I invite you to continue this transformational journey by checking out the videos appearing on your screen. By continuing to explore and apply these teachings, you'll forge an impenetrable inner citadel of tranquility and wisdom from which to operate as your best self. The path is arduous, but the rewards are immeasurable. Take the next step today. By clicking one of those videos, your most resilient life awaits.